the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. I'm your host, Jess Root from Cardinals-Wire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site covering, of course, the Arizona Cardinals, and we're in episode 465. This is the third show of the week. It's our second Cowboys-Cardinals preview. On our previous show was Seth and I, my normal co-host, Seth Cox, and I previewed the show from our perspective, gave picks, predictions, and prop bets that we like. This edition of the show, we have a new guest. It is Reid Hanson, who comes to us from Cowboys Wire. If you've been on the site Cards Wire, you would see that he already did a Behind Enemy Lines preview Q&A with me on the site in print form, and now we actually get to hear from him. So Reid, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on. This is a first, and I've only worked with KD over the last several years, so to get a new voice is a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I hope I can add some insight.
So, Cowboys, Cardinals, this is a game that, I published an article that had your predictions and my predictions, and also all of NFL Network's panel of predictors, a panel of guys making their predictions. Unsurprisingly, it is unanimous in favor of the Cowboys, and only one picks the Cardinals to cover the 12.5-point spread, and that would be Daniel Jeremiah predicting an 11-point Cowboys win. This matchup is, if it had not been for the Cardinals' collapse in the second half last week, I would believe that maybe the Cardinals could hang and cover at least. I do not believe that after seeing them give up 31 points to the Giants in the second half. And the Giants, their first game, were atrocious offensively. And on Thursday night, were atrocious offensively. And so any goodwill that this Cardinals defense gave me in the preseason and in the first 6 quarters, it disappeared with Carlos Watkins. And who'd have thought that Carlos Watkins would have been the difference to the defense being okay to the defense being bad?
Yeah, I'm a huge Carlos Watkins fan. He was one of my favorite guys, underrated player. I think that's a big thing. You're speaking very pessimistically about this matchup from the Arizona perspective, but I gotta say, with the Cowboys and Cardinals, all things are possible. And I am a jaded enough, old enough Cowboy fan to know that this team, as soon as they have you feeling good, will do something to make you feel just terrible.
Was it Bart Scott? Bart Scott just recently, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before today, he was with the Trayvon Diggs injuries, like, you know it's coming. This is just the first. You know something's coming. And they're like, no, you can't say that. But like Cowboys fans know, like something's coming, whether it's the Tony Romo injury on a team that was destined to be great.
Yeah.
To whatever it is. But yeah, and that Trayvon Diggs injury, you talked about it a little bit, a dynamic playmaker, but ultimately his absence is not going to break the back of this defense, isn't it?
I don't think so. I mean, it changes. It certainly changes how you match up against some of the most talented wide receiver groups. Dan Quinn likes to run a lot of cover one. He likes to use a lot of man with Stephon Gilmore and Trayvon Diggs. Is he going to be able to do the same thing with Diggs' replacement, who is likely to be Deron Bland? Probably. I think they're going to maintain their identity still. But maybe they won't be able to lean on it quite as much as they had in the past. But yeah, it's not backbreaking. Even though he's, one of the maybe 3 players that's all pro level on the Cowboys, they can survive this loss. And with a dominant pass rush like the Cowboys have right now, it can cover up a lot of little issues and buy you a whole lot of time.
Absolutely. On a separate note, because the last time the Cardinals and the Cowboys played, I recall, Trayvon was having a fantastic year, but he was also very prone because he went after so many footballs. He was also prone to getting beat on some big plays. Had he cleaned that up a bit, or is he still prone to give up like takeaway plays, but then also give them up on the other end?
Well, he is a very polarizing figure, as I'm sure you know. I would say he's less of a gambler than a lot of people want to call him. He plays a different brand of football than a traditional cornerback, and to grade him the same is impossible. He plays in phase. He's always looking for the ball, and he's reading the quarterback, and he might completely lose sight of the receiver that he's matched up on. So it does result in big plays. He has become more conservative. Last year, I thought was better than his 11 interception season. It wasn't as impactful because interceptions are, from an EPA perspective, one of the most impactful plays you can make. But he showed that he's not just going to be fast and loose his entire career. He showed that he is trying to play within a scheme. He's someone that you can lean on for some responsibilities, but he's never going to be the guy who shuts down the whole field or the whole side of the field. He's going to be the guy that people just avoid because the risk isn't worth the reward throwing to his side.
That makes sense. Other than Trayvon Diggs, who would be, you consider, the three most important defensive players that you have? I think we're probably going to agree it's probably Micah Parsons, but after Micah Parsons, Who is your number 2 and number 3 on that defense for what makes it tick?
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence is my clear number 2. So he plays the traditional defensive end. And he's been steady Eddie on the Cowboys for just years. And he's one of the best all-around ends in the NFL, in my opinion. He plays the run, he plays the screen. His only deficiency is being able to play a running quarterback, some kind of zone read or RPO read where the quarterback actually has a run option on the RPO. That's been his only deficiency. And then, number 3, I'm probably going to have to say at this time, Leighton Vander Esch, just the second level linebacker. The Cowboys are pretty thin at linebacker. In fact, they had to move a safety at the end of training camp into a linebacker role, and he's playing fantastically, but the true linebackers are very limited. And he represents a lot of size and very trustworthy player in Dan Quinn's defense.
On the offensive side of the ball, they haven't had to do much. You got a taste of the passing game last week. Dak throws for 255 and 2 touchdowns. Those are his only 2 touchdown passes of the year, and not a single receiver has a touchdown pass yet. It's a couple of dinks to tight ends. But CD also broke out with 140 yards. How soon, if we're looking at this game, how much will the passing game come into play, do you think?
I think they will pass as much as they need to. If this was Kellen Moore, our previous offensive coordinator, calling plays, I think he would be trying to score as many points as possible. I think Mike McCarthy is going out of his way to prove that he has nothing to prove on offense, that he is just trying to do what he needs to because he knows his defense is so good. And the good news is that doesn't show any opponents anything that's in the offensive playbooks. I don't think they've churned past the second page in the offensive playbook this year. Everything has been so basic and vanilla. There has been no reason to do anything special. Besides involve a few players like Kavontae Turpin is a receiver that they use kind of as a gadget man. They do sweeps, jet sweeps, orbital sweeps, things of that nature. But other than that, it's been a pretty vanilla game plan where it's offense, just don't screw up. Just move the ball, take your 3 points. The defense is going to get you the ball back in fantastic field position. That's it.
This feels like a team that Pete Carroll would just adore, where he doesn't have to his quarterback doesn't have to do anything. Is there any talk of letting Dak cook right now? Is that kind of, or are people upset that Dak hasn't had to do much, or is that? I know Dak up and down, like he is loved and hated. I know on certain levels of Cowboys fans because He's been so good. And just, I'll call this, and I'll do this because I think it's a funny joke across the league, is that there are many, many iterations of Kirk Cousins in the Dak Prescott. He's better than Kirk, but he's like Kirk Cousins. What is there, just, do they need Dak? Or do they need Dak to perform higher than he is? Or is it simply they will need him later, and when they do, they need it, as opposed to, hey, it doesn't matter right now?
You hit it right there at the end. They need Dak to win the important games, the important moments. That's when they're going to really need a quarterback like that. But so far, they haven't really needed greatness. That said, I mean, I believe he's at the top of total QBR right now because of how efficient he is. He's number 2 in EPA plus completion percentage over expected right now. So he's extremely efficient. Now, the difference, you mentioned the dirty word there, the Pete Carroll comparison. Pete Carroll and Mike McCarthy differ in the fact that I think Pete Carroll wants to run that Pete Carroll offense even when he doesn't have this Dan Quinn defense.
That's true.
Right? So I think Mike McCarthy has no problem flipping a switch and becoming the old Mike McCarthy who slang that ball everywhere the second he needs to be. That is my hope, that he goes back to his previous self, and that's what this offense is. The Cowboys went out of their way this offseason to build up their passing game. They did nothing to build up their running game, really. So that tells me that he knows that this is an important factor, and when games get tight, when they play steep competition, the past 2 times we got bounced from the playoffs, it was because the Cowboys ran out of playmakers. They ran out of guys who could do anything. I think that is the focus. They built the team to be ready for those moments, but they're not going to press it early. They're going to try to be a vanilla run heavy team and do just enough to get out of the way for their defense.
And the production, it's been points. I mean, you have a special teams touchdown, you got a defensive touchdown, but take that away, and the offense is scoring over 20 points a game just on boring move the chain. Like they're in the top 10 in rushing, but like in the bottom third in yards per attempt. And that's because they're just, it's fine. So if we get 3.5 yards per attempt, we'll still get our first downs and move the ball, and it won't matter. Right.
Yeah, against the Jets, they kept getting the ball in the Jets' territory. So there was really no effort to even get a first down. It was, we're just going to take our 3 points. We're going to kill some clock and take 3 points. And they were in that mindset seemingly for 2 quarters. But
oh, man. Coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Special Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's talk about specific matchups and keys to this game. That's coming up next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Special Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking to Reid Hanson from the Cowboys Wire, USA Today's NFL Wire site, covering the Dallas Cowboys, my sister site, to Cards Wire. Reid, we talk matchups. I think there's some fun ones in this one. I'd say primarily I'd look at Micah Parsons against Paris Johnson. I'm super excited about that one, except for how much will we actually see Micah line up and rush against the rookie?
There you go. Yeah, you've done your homework. They will move Micah to take on advantageous situations. They're going to hunt matchups. He's still going to go against Paris quite a bit, but do not be surprised to see him hitting the A gaps and lining up right over tackle. The Cowboys are going to stunt a lot.
Yes.
So he's going to line up wide and he's going to bounce inside, and they're going to stunt. They don't like to blitz. They like to stunt like crazy, though.
That is, watching some of the tapes, like he just is an absolute wrecking ball. And to think that when he came out of Penn State, it looked like he would just be like an absolute monster off the ball, and he's even that much better as a pass rusher. Is this his future in his career, or will we eventually see him drop more and play in space, or is he just too good at the line of scrimmage to take away from there?
Yeah, there's no reason to ever really move him to a true off-ball role. I imagine it would just be situational because he is good against the run and in short yardage situations, or goal line, things of that nature, to then move him off ball and put more girth up on the line. But yeah, there's no reason to put him back into space. He's just such a brilliant pass rusher. His pressure rate is basically a quarter of his snaps.
It's stupid. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Who do you anticipate, even if Diggs had been playing, would it have been more Diggs? Would it have been more Gilmore that would be matched up against Hollywood Brown? Or would they have stayed their side and would just simply have been whichever side Hollywood was on, they would cover him?
I would think that they would stay on their sides, but Diggs has traveled before, and I know they would rather Diggs match up with speed. So I imagine it could have gone either way. The Cowboys aren't super predictable in that regard. They're happier with with Diggs in the equation. They're
Obviously. That's like the Cardinals saying, we'd rather have Budda Baker playing. Yes, we would. Everyone knows that.
Yes. I think Budda Baker single-handedly beat us last time.
Oh, my gosh. He had such a game. Oh,
my goodness. What a beast.
Yeah. So how do you anticipate it then? So no Diggs. Will they just stay on whatever side they're on, where you might say?
Yeah, I think they're going to stay on their side without Diggs. Deron Bland is a second-year player, a lot of promise. He's got good hands, but very inexperienced. I mean, he's a day 3 pick. So second-year player, day 3 pick, limited experience, and primarily he's a nickel. I don't think they want to move him a lot. I think they want to get him as comfortable as possible. I truly believe he's their long-term answer at outside corner. Gilmore's only under contract for a year. So this just, speeds up the process. But I think they're going to try to keep things simple for him. So Arizona will be able to dictate matchups just by moving their guys.
One matchup you mentioned was in your piece was Dennis Gardeck against Terrence Steele. How do you see that playing out? I will say this. Dennis Gardeck had a very fluky 2020 season when he had 7 sacks and 96 defensive snaps. And he was a monster against the Cowboys that year when Andy Dalton played. But he's got 3 sacks in 2 games. He's been much more productive. And it looks like he plays more than he does because of his impact on the field right now. How do you see that matchup lining up, especially considering Gardeck is undersized. He's athletic, but he's built like an off the ball linebacker, and that's where they had Gardeck for a couple of years in his career was off the ball, and then they put him on the edge where he played more when he was in high school and in college, playing at Sioux Falls. You can get away with being 6'2", 230 or 6'1", 230 and rush the passer.
Yeah, the match. Yeah, anybody who's going to go against Terrence Steele is what I'm looking at, really. Now I think he's going to be matched up quite a bit. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how it's going to play out. But Terrence Steele in pass protection is the weak link. If the Cowboys have to go to 5-step drops, if they have to make plays downfield, then I start to get a little nervous. If you look at the time to throw. Dak Prescott's one of the fastest in the NFL right now. They're getting that ball out fast. So they haven't given up a sack from Terrence Steele, but they've gotten plenty of pressures, and he hasn't been put to the test.
And the Cardinals will play with a rotation of edge guys. So they've got Zaven Collins, they've got Dennis Gardeck, Cameron Thomas, 3rd-round pick last year out of San Diego State, Victor Dimukeje. They all have sacks so far this season, and their pressure, like they had 6 sacks against Washington. They had 3 in the first half and that was including the defensive line. So the Cardinals had 6 sacks in week 1, 3 in the first half of week 2. Hey, no worries, no worries. But they didn't have any sacks in the second half. So we look at this matchup, and let's. Who do you like? Do you like the makeshift, what's going to be a little bit of makeshift Dallas offensive line over the pass rush of the Cardinals? It looks like Biotish is going to be out, but you think that Zach Martin's still going to play even without practicing all week. And it looks like, Brick Hoffman should start at center instead of Biotish rather than Sharon Harlow, where Cardinals fans would feel for you on some level if Harlow had to start, although we would be pleased. So who do you think has the edge in this matchup? Offensive line versus pass rush?
I'm going to go with the offensive line. I imagine the Cowboys are going to keep themselves in a good enough situation where the offensive line isn't put to the test. I think they're going to run often. I think we're going to see very quick passes and not a lot of time in the pocket for Prescott. And I think he is going to move quite a bit in the pocket. As long as the game stays in the Cowboys' control, I don't think that Arizona is going to get a chance to really tee off, because I completely agree. Their pass rush is scary, and I question the Cowboys' pass protection. So the best way for Arizona to really get the Cowboys on their heels is to score early and get ahead on the board then.
Easier said than done, but yeah, that would make sense with that. Is there any phase to the game where you think that the Cardinals have a slight advantage? Any matchup at all?
I really like your tight ends, Ertz and McBride. I was looking through some of the personnel packages and success rates and tendencies, and I was noticing that the Cardinals, when they go to 12 personnel, they pass, and they're very effective when they pass. A lot of teams, when they go big, when they go to two tight end sets, they're going to run the ball. Now, the Cowboys employ a lot of safeties, so they're going to match up safeties, not linebackers, against your tight ends. But I think those tight ends are going to be allowed a lot of room to eat in the middle. And I think the Cowboys are going to try to protect Bland on the outside and maybe play a little too high more often than they normally do. So I think there's going to be some room to operate in the middle of the field.
How are the Cowboys defenders at tackling? If we looked at Washington, one of the things they tackled extremely well. The Cardinals like to employ the running backs and the tight ends in the passing game, but in that first game, James Conner had 5 catches for 8 yards. Zach Ertz had 6 catches for 21 yards. I joked last week that he was pacing for 100 catches for 500 yards. He did a little bit better average-wise in terms of yards last week, but is that Dallas defense, in addition, obviously, to the pass rush and the ball hawking skills that they have, are they very good at keeping, as what we saw Washington, if there is a short pass, they're not getting yards after the catch?
Yeah, they are a swarming defense. They love to tee off. It's the culture of the team. But it's not the traditional too high kill zone where they allow a short pass and then they come in and kill you. This is more reverting back a little bit to gap control inside and then limited defense deep. So if you can break through the first layer of defense, there's room to operate. And that's where the Cowboys then have to try to collapse. So it's not exactly the kill zone thing of, the Fangio scheme, but they are a hard-hitting team and they are swarming, and it is in their culture to deliver the big hit.
Coming up next on the Rise Up Series podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk, and let's wrap it up and let's make our predictions for this game. Anything that we think that will come out of that. That's coming up next on Rise Up Series. We're back on the Rise of Seared podcast, Best of Cardinals Talk on the web. Time to make our predictions for this game. We both, on what we wrote for the Behind Enemy Lights pieces, we both have the Cowboys winning convincingly. You had them winning by 14, 27-13. I have them 34-13, going with a 21-point win. What makes you think that the Cardinals can keep them under 30, which so far it's been 40-0 and 30-10? Averaging 35 points a game, holding. What makes you think that the Cardinals, or what about this game, will keep them under 30 points this week?
I think Dallas is going to come out firing right away, and they're going to try to get a lead pretty quickly. I don't think they're going to be conservative all in their first couple drives, and then at that point, I think they're going to go on cruise control. Not to be disrespectful to Arizona, but the two teams are just a different life cycles right now.
Goodness.
So I said before, I don't think Mike McCarthy is trying to show people how awesome he is at play calling, but I do think he's champing at the bit a little bit to put up some points and to show that he can pass it and he can have a little flash right away at the beginning.
Do you think that there's any big pass plays going to happen? Last week, Marco Wilson gave up a couple of big ones to Jalen Hyatt. He looked actually bad last week, and the CD we know has that capability. Do you think that we'll say 1.5, if we're going to set the prediction, we're over or under 1.5 pass plays that go over 20 yards down that are completed, that 20 yards down the field?
I don't think so. And it's not because I don't think the Cowboys can, but they just haven't shown a willingness to take a lot of shots yet. I don't think they're going to put up a huge pass. And I think defensively, they're going to try to keep things in front of them as well. I don't think this is going to be a big play game.
13 points would definitely surpass what we've seen from either opponent. What makes you think, and I think they'll get 13, though I'm not confident in that. What makes you think that the Cardinals can score 3 times in this game?
I think the Cowboys' main weakness, if there's any weakness at all right now on defense, it's ability to stop the run, and specifically outside runs, and when you have a quarterback who can run the ball. Even if it's a fairly certain situation where the quarterback is a run option, throughout the past few years, the Cowboys have shown little discipline in handling any kind of option on the outside. So I think opportunities will be there for specifically Connor. I was looking, he had most of his yardage has come on the outside, running at the tackle or outside. And I think that kind of plays into a weakness of the Cowboys, where they want to filter things inside a little more. And yeah, I see a situation where the weakness of the Cowboys is stopping Connor, stopping Dobbs, and that is probably one of the few strengths that the Cardinals can point to, that they can execute.
How many turnovers do you think the Cowboys will create this week?
3.
3 turnovers.
Yeah.
How many do you think that the Cowboys turn the ball over at all?
Probably 1.
Okay.
They're due. Last week Prescott threw they haven't had a single turnover on offense, but last week Prescott threw a gimme pick 6 that got dropped by Sauce. Yeah, Sauce of all people. So it's just inevitable. It's going to happen. You can't be +7 in turnover differential 2 weeks into the season and expect that pace to continue.
Now, can they certainly increase the differential? Definitely. But to do it at and end up at 10-0, that would be tough. All right. So do you hold to the 27-13? So so you think this game will be extremely boring, or is what you're saying?
I do. I think it's going to be horrendous football.
And on my end, I'm just hoping that the Cardinals are not embarrassed. If it's a 27-13 game, I'm okay with that. If it's not too it's just boring to watch, it's methodical. I just don't want the Cardinals to be embarrassed the way the Giants were embarrassed. That was an embarrassing game in week 1 for the Cowboys to win that fashion, and to have the Cardinals just look overwhelmed but not be embarrassed. And I don't know, I am normally perhaps the most optimistic Cardinals fan and analyst you will come across. I think that I pegged this game from week 3 when the schedule came out. That's a game that's a no chance the game, especially week 3 when we knew that Kyler wasn't going to be back. No chance. Colt McCoy, Josh Dobbs, wouldn't matter who it is. This is a game where the Cardinals will be absolutely lucky if they just cover the spread. Oh man.
Yeah, I'm not getting cocky here. I'm not gonna bite.
But I'm saying the Cowboys have feasted. The Cowboys have feasted on these lesser competition so far.
Yes.
I guess that's probably the biggest question mark about Dallas so far is, yes, they've been so dominant, but look at the competition. New York looked like a hot mess. The Jets, I mean, with Zach Wilson, they're basically last year's Jets. The Cardinals on paper, are worse than both of those teams. And so the way that the Dallas has played, and not only just played, but just taken absolute care of business against lesser competition, it doesn't leave much hope that the Cardinals will be anywhere near competitive other than just methodically behind and the time is running out. Now, we can have a conversation about how the Cowboys will match up against Philly, against San Francisco, against the expected juggernauts of the AFC and the NFC. But for right now, I mean, there's no reason to believe that the Cardinals can even be competitive in this game. It would take an absolute perfect game from them to be competitive in this game.
Right. It will take turnovers. It will require Arizona to win the turnover differential. There's no question in my mind. It'll take a very low scoring game. It will require a dominant time of possession from Arizona. A lot of things have to go right for the Cardinals to win this game. There's no question. But it's certainly possible. We've seen crazy things happen before. And, I think this is going to be a test of character for both franchises. The Cowboys, that they can keep the pedal to the metal and respect their opponent and play a complete game regardless to show they have a killer instinct, because that's what it takes to be a great team. They've proven they're a good team. Now, can they hang with, the 49ers? That's really the carrot that we're chasing, is the 49ers. So can the Cowboys do that? And I guess, same for Arizona, is who's part of this big long-term project? Who's somebody we want to keep build around? What players, have the killer instinct regardless of the score?
Yeah. Absolutely. This is Reid Hanson. You can find his work at Cowboys Wire, at the Cowboys Wire for the USA Today and NFL Wire. You can find him on what is formerly known as Twitter. I think I will always call it Twitter, X, at Reid D. Hanson. That's an REID and SON on the Hanson. Anywhere else that my Cardinals fans, my Cardinals listeners can find your work, Reid?
I am also a weekly contributor at the Landry Hat.
All right. So Cardinals fans, that's how you get that. If you're looking for cross-content stuff, that's Reid Hanson from the Cowboys Wire and the Landry Hat. Thanks for listening to the Rise Up Secret podcast. We will be back on Tuesday with Seth to break down what is hopefully not a debacle and is just a sad loss. Thanks for listening as always. Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.